the government of national unity is something that the ANC wants. What exactly does that mean, though?
Very good question. What does government of national unity mean to anybody? Well, we don't actually know. What we do know is that originally the ANC seemed dead certain it was going to go into a formal coalition agreement with the DA and possibly the IFP. But the commies in the party basically said no, they're not allowing that to happen because, reasons. But inevitably, the ANC had to think about a different way that they could slice the pie known as the political sphere of South Africa. And so they came up with this idea of a government of national unity, whereby they can go to all the other political parties and say, who wants a job? Because there's effectively like 38 ministries and 58 deputy presidents and all sorts of other bullshit. And they're like, Oprah Winfrey, you can get a job and you can get a job. And all you got to do is lend us your votes so that we can basically have a unified government that gets us all together, a majority. So is it going to work?
Well, I have absolutely no idea, but I think people are sort of underestimating what could have been. For years, people have been saying the ANC and the EFF are going to bed. They're going to turn this country into Zimbabwe, and we don't want the ANC under 50% because the EFF is going to take advantage of it, etc., etc., etc. That has not happened. It could easily have happened, but the ANC chose not to pursue that. And I think people are underestimating that to their own peril, because I sort of agree with you. I think the ANC itself, not the tripartite alliance, the ANC itself knows it can only survive if they bring economic growth to South Africa. The best people to do that with is the DA and the IFP. They can't say that in public because the communists will go against them and Kosati will go against them and whatever. The Black Business Council will go against them. So they don't want to alienate all those people immediately. So instead, they're going to say, let's have a government of national unity, invite everyone into the tent under very narrow parameters. Respect the constitution, put South Africa first, and whatever for the put the future of the nation in our hands. Once you have those parameters in, EFF and MK don't really feature.
No, they don't. But now you have to look at why a immediate coalition between the DA and the ANC is not possible. So let us actually use an example of the Black Business Chambers, who came out and said, at a policy level, a union between the ANC and the DA threatens the many gains the ANC made over the last decade. According to the BBC, Black Business Council, the DA campaigned on repelling progressive and race-based legislation, including black economic empowerment, the National Healthcare, or the National Insurance Act, the NHI, and the Expropriation Bill, and removing racial targets from the Employment Equity Act, and the Preferential Procurement Policy Framework. Mate, you'd swear to God that this was written by a bunch of freaking communist bastards who were in government trying to lobby them as political activists. But no, this is the Black Business Chamber. And all of these policies are things that actually killed business in South Africa. Now, we know that parties such as these are all after the grift. They're after the tenders. They're after the little bribes. They're after all the things that make it lucrative for them themselves to own the state. And it's these very things that have meant the ANC have now lost their majority. So the problem that the ANC has is that they empowered these very people to be this ideological, which means that the remedy that the ANC needs, the medicine, if you will, is not easily digestible because all the parties are very anti that very type of thing in the first place, like you've just seen. Now, the answer could be, and I don't want to jump the gun, Ramon, and I don't want to say it's not going to happen. The answer could have been that the ideology and the rhetoric was backed up with an ANC-EFF coalition. And it may still be, we don't yet know. But the government are retarded, but they're not that retarded. Yes, they've pumped this rhetoric for a long time. They've brainwashed people into believing it to be true. But they also know that it is directly responsible for an economic decline under their watch. So what do they do now? Stick to ideology and rhetoric, or actually improve the material circumstances of the average South African in order to potentially get back into power come 2029? It's a difficult one, isn't it?
No, it's not a difficult one. I mean, the announcement for Government of National Unity by the ANC was a cry for help. help me. I'm a patient. I'm a drug addict. I've been, drinking alcohol for 30 years. Life was really good. I was a party animal. Now I need rehab. Someone else takes you to rehab, right? Someone else administers the medicine. Someone else fixes what you broke. That someone else is a DA, the IFP, whatever, Freedom Front Plus, whoever happens to join the Government of National Unity. All these other ancillary parasitic organizations like COSATU and the Black Business Council and the Communist Party, those people are not suffering the consequences of their actions. The ANC is suffering the consequences of their actions. As the ANC themselves, there needs to have self-preservation, and they're going to find it with the DA and the IFP et al. It's as simple as that, and they know it. If they didn't have any sense of self-preservation, the ANC would have said, we are in coalition with the EFF and the PA. They could have done it. They would have had a majority. They could have done whatever they needed to do to make that a reality. They are in coalition with them in major metros. They could just repeat that at a national level, but they didn't do it. Why? Because 40% needs some sort of reflection. And I think we are getting that reflection in this cry for help through a Government of National Unity.
Yes, now unfortunately, in this terms of negotiations, the ANC are, to quote Julius Malema, slightly arrogant in that they are pretty much at this point in time, their alliance partners are unwilling to negotiate on anything. Just give us what we want, because trust me, bro, you need to, or else there'll be consequences. Yeah, it's pretty much their negotiation tactic, which doesn't really work. Now, the DA have come out and said that they would be prepared to work with the ANC on the proviso that, one, ANC outlaws gated deployment, two, that they actually keep the Reserve Bank independent, and three, can you grow the economy? That would be swell. And unfortunately, the certain sectors of the ANC currently think that that's incredibly racist for them to want those things, and they're not really keen to side with the colonizer and the repressor. Their statements, not mine. And so it is very debatable at this point in time whether pragmatism will reign supreme. But yes, I think I agree with you. The ANC does understand that pragmatism does need to be the name of the game. It just really depends on whether or not they're going to have the balls to do it, because this will not come without an internal cost to the ANC itself.
Yeah, but the long-term cost to the ANC, if they carry on with the same road that they've been traveling for the past 30 years, is a 20% party in 2029, and then no one will remember it. If there's a modicum of stability and economic growth before 2029, the ANC could be back at 50% quite easily if they play their cards right. The DA could be at 30% if they play their cards right. So to me, this alliance between the DA, IFP, ANC makes sense for all the parties, and you sort of also kick out the radical that prevents living conditions from improving, because that's what people vote on, living conditions.
Yes, and I think there is actually another element of this, and that is even if the ANC does not get itself back to 50%, the DA will not get itself to 50%. And so what they could do is, if they manage to figure out how to find each other now, they could even partner up in the next elections and have a repeat of these, where the ANC and the DA continue on and support each other, support very loosely in terms of national legislation for the good of the country. Now, you may look at that and say, wow, that's really bad. But this type of politics has been tried and tested in places like Germany for pretty much since the Nazis were there. They pretty much had coalition governments like forever, and it works just fine for them. So it is a template that can work in many instances. It's actually a good template because it forces people to be a bit tempered with their political positions. They actually have to think about them a little bit, and they have to negotiate. They can't just bully their way with the majority. So it is good political strategy. And let's face it, the DA doesn't want to be the ANC. So they're never going to go out there and try basically cannibalize the party from inside, in order to become them. The DA and MK will. So a strategy of this variety with those two parties possibly doesn't have long-term benefits to the ANC now, does it?
No, it doesn't. And if I had to put my money on any coalitions at any stage in life, you always pick the coalition where the parties are sort of in opposition to each other. As you say, these tend to last a lot longer than parties who are friendlier. Because if you're friendlier, you're basically in competition with each other. If you're not in competition with each other, you have different electorates, you can get away with a whole lot more leeway between each other to actually do the right thing. So that's my analysis on this. Let's hope everyone makes a good choice.